Whether you're a YouTuber, a blogger, or a podcaster, you'll probably find yourself as a content creator sitting across from a guest, usually one that you've never met before. Maybe you book them on a booking service like Guestio.com, or maybe you've connected with them just through a mutual friend or gone through the tedious process of reaching out to their assistant and going through email hell for 2 years to get them on your show. But when you're sitting across from your guest, how do you get the most out of that conversation? It can be difficult, especially when they've been on show after show after show, to make a conversation seem unique to your platform and to get maximum value out of the conversation. My name is Eric Skwarczynski. I host the Preacher Boys podcast. It's a true crime show where I interview survivors of abuse within independent Baptist churches. In addition to that, I also interview experts, authors, psychologists, and a whole host of other really amazing experts who talk about the process of recovery, as well as some pressing issues within the church. But I'm not here to talk about that topic specifically. I want to tell you something that I do that's really simple that helps me get the most out of these conversations. Now, like I mentioned, I host the Preacher Boys podcast. I'm about 162 episodes into the show as of the recording of this video, and I want to give you this simple thing that I've implemented on this show. I've also implemented this in the Build Your Network podcast, which Forbes included in their list of top 10 podcasts that will change your life. I recently joined on as a co-host over there, and you can join the link in the bio to check out and see what that's all about. And here's some interviews from yours truly to see me put this into action. But here's the issue with most podcasts. I have this amazing journal here. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to draw you a really simple diagram that shows you what happens in most podcasts. And you've probably seen this as you've listened to shows yourself. Most podcasts, the amount of interest you have in that episode starts about here. This is your start point. I don't know if you can see that. This is your starting point. And as the episode goes, the quality of the conversation gets better and better and better and better. And then you get to that last part of the episode, the last 5 minutes of this 45-minute episode right here. And then the conversation stops. So you have all this buildup. What did you eat? What do you like about this? Blah, 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 blah. You get into a really gripping conversation. They get comfortable. And then it's over. That's the end of the show. And it can be really, really frustrating. I don't know how many times I've been listening to a podcast episode and all of a sudden it's just over. I'm getting into it. I want to hear more. I could listen to it for hours at this point. I'm so sucked into the story and the conversation. And then boom, this conversation's over. And so as a podcaster, whether it's through Build Your Network or through the Preacher Boys podcast, I've wanted to find ways to make my conversations more compelling from the get-go. So here's what I've done, because again, if I want to be the best podcaster out there, which I'm not yet, I'm not saying that I am, if I want to be in the long term, I need my shows to start here. What makes this part of the conversation so compelling? And the reality is, what makes this section of the conversation so compelling is the amount of trust and relationship that's been built between the guest and the host that's allowed them to really open up and have a deep conversation. So how do you start this right here? How do you avoid starting in this generic, bland section where the first 10 minutes is really just build up to get you to this point? Well, the answer to that is actually really simple. So again, my goal as a podcast host is to start right here. I want to start in an emotional peak. I want to build know, like, and trust with my guest really quickly so we can have a really solid conversation. So the problem is most podcast hosts start with an investigative question. They're going to ask a very broad question that helps the conversation slowly start rolling. That question is usually something like, so how did you get into show business? Or, hey, what inspired you to write this book? This question is a good way to kind of put feelers out there and get a sense of where the person's coming from, but you're going to be starting at ground zero. You're not building any know, like, or trust with that question. You're just being a journalist. You're just asking a question. What I've tried to do with my episodes and with all of my interview content is start with what I like to call an informed question. And an informed question looks a little bit like this. Instead of asking something like, how did you get into show business? I try to do a little bit of research before the episode and ask a question that is informed. So instead of asking, how did you get into show business? I would phrase the question like this. Hey, I know you got into show business because your father was an actor. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with him. I did two things by asking the question that way. First, I let them know that I did my research without just saying, hey, I did a lot of research on you. So they're sitting there knowing that I'm not just another person who booked an interview and didn't put in any time to research their story. So their trust in me is going to go up a little bit. It may not go all the way to best friend level, but they know enough to know that I have some integrity and I was willing to do some research. The other thing that does is it launches us into a more intimate conversation a lot quicker. Instead of them trying to figure out what inspired them to become an actor, I can say from their biography, I know you became an actor because your father was an actor. Tell me about that relationship. Their mind is going to the intimate relationship between them and their father, as opposed to just vague thoughts about, oh, I loved movies, or whatever the question is that they would kind of give as a default. So now, 5 minutes into the conversation, we're having a really good heart-to-heart conversation about the inspiration that their father was to them and how they got into acting. And this can work across the board. It can be referring to a speech that they gave and referencing it by name. It could be saying, hey, I noticed in chapter 3 of your book, you said this. What did you mean by this? It's a really simple way to build know, like, and trust a lot faster. So instead of your conversation starting right here, you're starting your conversation right here. Again, asking an informed question is going to start you up here and only let the conversation go up. By the time you're finishing your conversation, you're in territory that few podcasters and other interviews will ever get to. What do you guys think? Do you think asking informed questions will improve your interviews? Try it out and let me know in the comments below. And if you have any more questions about podcasting, storytelling, growing your channels, anything like that, be sure to drop a comment below. I'd love to talk with you guys a little bit and create content that's helpful to you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys